when you get in a big school of fish, that skipjack really has no idea where he wants to go. He'll go 20 foot one way, then turn back around quickly, and you can really gauge. And that's what's kind of helped me out, is gauge when those fish are about to eat, because that skipjack, it'll go this way, this way, this way, this way, this way, and then it gets tighter, and then it comes up to the surface, and I call it the circle of death. And I say, you're about to get nailed. So, it's probably really similar to what you'd see, in the ocean. This is Captain Billy Davis, and you're listening to the Tom Rowland Podcast.
What's going on, everybody? We've got an awesome guest for you today. I know you hear me say that every week, but I do seek out people that I really think that you're going to enjoy. And one of the people that I've fished with in the last few years that I really did enjoy fishing with, and I fished with this guy more than once, and he's not a saltwater guide. He's a freshwater guide. Melton Hill Bill. Melton Hill is a reservoir in Tennessee, and Bill is Captain Billy Davis. Captain Billy Davis is spending over 300 days a year chasing the striped bass in Tennessee reservoirs like Melton Hill, and he's as good as they get. He became known or first noticed by doing one of Larry Dahlberg's shows. You might remember The Hunt for Big Fish. It was one of the best shows on TV, and Larry Dahlberg is certainly one of the best anglers on TV and an awesome television host. He launched the career for Captain Billy Davis, and since then he has never looked back. He had some interesting times to decide that he was going to quit his job and become a fishing guide, and it's obviously been a very good choice for him because he is catching tons of these big striped bass. He also catches muskie, and he's got some great stories and just overall super cool guy to spend the day with. If you want to check him out, meltonhillbill.com, meltonhillbill, meltonhillbill.com. That's his website. You can go there and check him out, see what he does. And you know what? If that's something that you're thinking about doing, book early, because he is booked all the time. The guy is fishing every single day, and he knows a few things. So we're going to find out what he knows and his story right now with Melton Hill Bill. Billy Davis, how are you, man?
Sir, I'm doing good.
Man,
doing good.
I'm glad to have you on here. You've been on the list for a long time. I've been wanting to have you on the podcast. Man, you're a hard-working fishing guide.
I go as much as I can.
Do you?
It's year-round.
I have heard that you fish as much as 300 days a year.
Yeah, at least.
Is that right? At least?
Yes, sir. Yeah, we have year-round fishing right here. You've been with me out to these steam plants, so you can get out there in the dead of winter, and the water can be 60 to 70 degrees, and those fish don't know it's January.
That's awesome. There aren't that many places that you can fish 300 days a year. You certainly can in the Keys. I think maybe there's some Louisiana guys that are getting 300 days a year. Where else do you think you could do it?
Well, shoot, I would think anywhere that's got, just a variety of man-made influences. These dams, we have these series of dams, and the water, a lot of times that comes out of these dams is rarely never colder than 50 degrees. So you can always have 50-degree water.
Yeah.
You have, I think in Arkansas, you would probably have some situations like that where you have some deeper dams. I think that's the man-made influences really help, establish our fisheries here. So
for sure. Well, 300 days was always a big benchmark for me. That was like, if you could get to 300 days, there were a couple things going on right. First of all, you're in a fishery that can support it. Secondly, you've got something there that is drawing people all the time, right? Like the fishing has to be good enough. And then you have to be providing a level of service that's good enough that, but it's not just like you have 300 people that want to go fishing, because a bunch of people want to fish on the same days. So really, to book 300 days, you have to have far more people than that. So it's really a testament, in my opinion, to any guide that can fish 300 days, and a testament to where they're fishing. Let's talk about like what you do. What is, like, in the course of 300 days, are you fishing mostly for stripers, or do you fish for other species, or what do you do?
I fish probably 90% of the time for striped bass, because we can catch them any day of the year. These fish are cold water fish. They prefer temperatures 50 to 70 degrees, so you can catch them any time of the year. I do chase muskies every now and then. I kind of do that in the wintertime just because it's so physically demanding fishing for muskies. It's in the dead of summertime. It is very difficult to do that. So
let's talk about the muskie a little bit. That's a fish that I have fished for. I fished for them with you unsuccessfully. We didn't get one, but I fished for them a couple other places, and they're called the fish of 10,000 casts. That's what I always heard them referred to as a kid. Yep. And I always kind of wondered, like, for somebody that knows muskie, is that right, or is that like a legend?
What I would say, it's 10,000 casts if you don't really have an idea about muskie.
See, that's what I was thinking. Like, it got to be easier to catch than that for somebody that can really get it worked out. Tell me about the muskie.
So they started stocking muskies here in 1998. They were originally native to Tennessee. I think when they built the dams and stuff, kind of hurt their ecosystem, and they quit reproducing. So they started stocking in 98.
Now, wait, is the muskie a native fish to Tennessee?
It is.
Okay.
Yes, it's native to all the rivers here. So that was the part of the stocking program effort, was to bring back some of the native strain and put them in reservoirs that they would thrive in. And of course, Melton Hill was the main reservoir they chose to put a lot of these in. And kind of, I got lucky and grew up at the right time. I graduated college and started fishing pretty hot and heavy, and come to find out this lake is loaded with muskies. So I was able to fish around that Bull Run steam plant in the wintertime and do really well. Got a lot of practice with muskies. We would have, follows. The follows was the big term, and we would have 30 to 40 follows in a day.
And what really keeps them from biting?
Pardon me?
What keeps them from biting? You're getting 40 follows, but you can't close the deal. Like, what's the problem?
We closed the deal a lot. Yeah, it was pressured fishing. We didn't know what we were doing with the figure eights, and very limited on the muskie tackle that we had. There was no muskie shops or anything like that. You couldn't order hardly anything on the internet, so we went all out just trying different things, and we stumbled across a couple of bucktail lures that would really entice them. But if that's all that you had, those muskies do wise up, and you would get a lot of follows. But, as the internet grew and, early 2000s, we were able to start ordering a lot of baits online, and we figured a lot of things out, had a lot of practice, and had a lot of fun.
So a lot of the muskie fishing that I've seen, and some of the muskie fishing that I did in a lake in Kentucky, I went up there to try to catch them. And we were fishing with the heaviest tackle. I mean, I could have caught a marlin with this tackle. It was so heavy. It was like, he told me what to bring. And I looked through all my stuff, and I was like, man, that's the heaviest rod I got. I guess. And I spooled it up with like 120-pound braid. And I was like, this has got to be overkill. Like, this is not even fun to throw. Like, what's your opinion on that heavy tackle?
I fish a lot of fallen timber. I will pull my boat within 30 to 40 feet of a fallen tree, and I know that there's a muskie sitting in there. Mm-hmm. So you have to not only pull that muskie away from that tree, because he's going to come up and grab your lure, and he's going to go right back into that tree. Mm-hmm. So you have to stop that fish. So it takes these 9-foot rods, these super heavy broomstick rods with 100-pound. But also that muskie will come up and they'll do the figure eight maneuver, just right there at the boat. And you have to have a big rod if you're throwing some of these double bladed baits to keep your bait swimming, you have to have a real heavy rod. And plus, when that muskie comes up and grabs it, you've got to set that hook, because a lot of times they will come up and grab it and just sit there. And if you don't get that hook set, they're going to spit it right back out. And it just takes a pretty beefy rod to drive those hooks home.
I got it. So what are they eating regularly? Like, what's their diet?
I would think the muskies that they're going to eat whatever they can. I think, gizzard shad, if you're out, roaming open water, the gizzard shad's going to kind of be, if you follow the bait in the gizzard shad, you'll more than likely run into some muskies. I know they eat crappie, anything, they're going to sit in these fallen trees a lot of times and just ambush. A muskie is shaped like a log. Mm-hmm. When I started really getting hot and heavy, I bought an AquaView camera and I would drop them down in these trees, and you could see the muskies sitting right up under these trees. They would just ambush. They would sit still, and that's how I knew, how to present, the baits. You wouldn't necessarily throw right up into the tree, but you would throw past the tree, pull it by, and that muskie will shoot out of that tree. And it was very neat to
that's pretty exciting.
Stuff out and use some of that technology. That we didn't quite have the down imaging, and it's hard to see a muskie just on 2D sonar. But man, when you started using the AquaView camera, and you could see them, you could figure out, these things are laying right here. If you make this cast, you should get it to come out.
That's cool, man.
We figured a lot of that stuff out, so it was a lot of fun.
That's cool. And then why? I mean, the muskie fishing is obviously really good. Why is it that you're spending 90% of your time chasing the striped bass?
Because I can go out and catch muskies. My buddies can go out and catch muskies with me. But no offense, a lot of the guys that I would take, and I'm sure you ran into this too, can't make that cast.
Right.
I knew how long I could throw to this treetop, count 2.5 seconds, and then pull my bait out. But if you don't, you're trying to hit an area the size of a hula hoop, from 50 foot out. And if you can't do it, it's like, tarping on a fly. If you miss the shot, you miss the shot.
Right.
And with muskies, it was just, it was too stressful for me as a fishing guide.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I would go out there. We make all these casts, do all this effort. The guys get lazy. They're not a lot of them in shape. They can't physically do it. And then here comes this muskie. You finally get this muskie to follow you in, and they don't do a figure 8 maneuver, or they pull the lure out of the water. So,
yeah. So then it's kind of like, man, these people would like the stripers just as much as this muskie, and we're going to be able to get that done. I started taking those same guys, they would spend 20 minutes saying, oh, we can't do this. And I said, well, let's go catch some skipjacks and float them for stripers. And every one of them would be like, oh, this is awesome. This is so much more fun. So it's a lot less demanding. Yeah. Well, not to take anything away from either type of fishing, but the striper fishing that I've done with you is awesome. It is fantastic.
It's the closest thing we have to going out on the coast, and
I know. You're really fishing mostly with live bait. I guess we've always done it with live bait. I love fishing with live bait because it's very, very what you're doing is very similar to a lot of saltwater fishing situations that we find ourselves in. And then you're fishing for a fish that, a true trophy fish. You could catch a fish 20, 30, 40, 50 pounds with you. And that's really awesome. That is a good fishery, and you really have it down. And that's where we're going back to, to be able to book 300 days a year, you have to have something that is such a draw that you bring, there's thousands of people that want to go fishing with you, not 300, because lots of them want to go on the same day, same weekend, whatever. So in order to keep booking those days and stay booked like that, you're obviously doing a whole lot of things right. And if you go to your website, which is Melton Hill Bill, I suggest that you should go there. It's pretty cool. There are just pictures. I like how you have it, like all the different years of stripers. So it's not like this is like a fluke. Like it's like you can go back years and you can see the kind of fish that you're producing. It's really cool. So what is it about the striper that that captivated you? Everybody's got like a story about either their first one or one that just, what is it about that fish that you find so interesting?
Well, I grew up around the Bull Run steam plant on Melton Hill Lake, and it had produced several state record size fish. One time it held the world record, 55 pounds, and then it went back and forth with a lake in Middle Tennessee called Cordell Hole, and 65 is now the state record, but at one time Melton Hill held the state record, 63-pound striper. So, and I grew up hearing about all these, and I of course would fish around the Bull Run steam plant, and it just captivated me. I went there and saw how the guys, fished for them, and it just kind of lit a fire under me. I tried several different methods to try to get them, but I come to find out the live bait is, I guess, the easiest. I got into a little white bass fishing too, and I'll give you this short story. We would fish on several lakes around town, catching little white bass on Zara spooks and Zara puppies, just the real little 2 to 3 pound white bass. Mm-hmm. And I snuck out to Melton Hill one day. I was probably still in college and was just, noticed some bait balls, just kind of getting work. I said, that looks interesting. So I started throwing the little Zara puppy, and I probably had, I don't know, it could have been a 35 pounder, just come up and inhale that little Zara puppy and spooked me, and I'm like, so this is what it's all about. That was probably the first time I'd ever felt the true power of a striper, and it was on a 12-pound test on a topwater lure. And I was like, wow. Oh gosh, this is what I was meant to do. So I kind of, quit everything else and decided I was not going to bass fish. I was going to chase stripers. Yeah.
And then how did that translate into guiding for them?
So I actually started out as a muskie fishing guide. I was, there were so many other striper guides around that, I was like, hey, I want to do something different. So I would, like I said, back in 98, they started stocking these muskies. So 2003 is when we really, really started targeting the muskies. And I noticed that there was a local muskie club that met at the Gander Mountain. And I joined that club. And I was one of the younger guys, but had caught a lot of fish compared to a lot of these older guys were from up north, and they'd muskie fish their whole life. So they would run this club. And then here I was, this young 23-year-old guy that mentioned the idea that, well, you need to have a website. This was the 2004, 2005 discussion forum started to take off. So the old timers didn't want to do a website. I was like, well, I'll do my own. So I started up this website, tnmuskies.org. And, we had the group chat, and we would start sharing photos and stuff. This was all kind of new technology. And the guys up north would say, hey, who's the local muskie guy down there? There wasn't one. I'll do it. So I started taking these guys muskie fishing out of a 16-foot jet boat, just a small little boat, and it was on. We did good. I would take mainly the guys I would take were the guys that already knew how to muskie fish, because this was all brand new. Right. So they just wanted to come down and see the water. So we did pretty well.
That's awesome.
Mainly, fishing fallen trees, and did really well. Caught a lot of muskies up to 54 inches. So we had good times.
Yeah. And so did you just start your guide career and just start from there, from being a muskie guide, or did you?
Guided muskies only. Yeah, just guided muskies only for probably about 3 to 4 years. And as word grew, then that's when more and more people started to come. I was just doing this part-time on the weekends and after work.
What was the work?
I was an environmental geologist.
Environmental geologist. And is that what you studied in college? Yeah,
I was a geology major in college, and my ultimate plan was to work with my uncle down in Louisiana. He's a petroleum geologist down there and makes the big bucks. And I was like, that's what I want to do. So I was all gung ho on getting my degree, going down there and fishing and working as a geologist until my junior year, and I had a son. So that kind of put a wrinkle in things, because his mama was not going to move to Louisiana.
Yeah. So,
like, well, I'm going to stay here.
So then what? You stay there and
stay here and found a job in the environmental field, which was totally different than what I was wanting to do. But, I worked out in Oak Ridge at a environmental consulting business, and I drove by that Bull Run steam plant every single day. I would drive by that steam plant, and there's a road that goes right by it. And there's some days I would be sitting on the bridge looking down at the steam plant, seeing the stripers go nuts.
Wow.
So I was drawn to that area, and it made it very difficult to go to work. So I did my job. I got off work early. I bought a little 16-foot boat, and I would pull my boat to work with me. And as soon as I got off work, man, I'm raced and got to the water. And you already
knew what was happening because of the ride over.
Yeah, I knew the skipjacks were there. I knew, I could tell, that's they don't publish when that steam plant's running. You have to drive by and look. And I drove by it every day. So I knew when it was going to come on. You could tell just by the steam and stuff that would come out of certain pipes, be like, oh man, this thing's going to fire up in about 2 or 3 days. So yeah, I got to, really figure things out. I was figured out well before anybody else. And I would go in there and catch fish 2 weeks before anybody else would even figure it out. So and I kind of got I got to get the first run and wear them out before anybody else really even showed up to catch them.
That's cool. And so you're doing this kind of after work and you're smoking them and everything. When do you decide that you're going to not do that job anymore and you're going to guide? Because at some point you have to to guide 300 days a year, you got to get rid of that job somehow. Yeah. That's pretty interesting to me, because a lot of people that listen to this podcast are thinking about doing that in some way, shape, or form, going into the retail business or being a hunting guide or being a fishing guide. And some of the most interesting stories that I've had on this podcast have been about people's decision to make that move. So what was that like for you?
Well, I got my big break, I guess, back 2010. Got to fish with Larry Dahlberg on the Hunt for Big Fish.
Nice.
And was fortunate enough to really, really do well. Landed 50-inch muskies. Had a real good show that was, kind of based off the over-harvesting of muskies around that steam plant, so that the show had kind of it had a message behind it. We caught a lot of fish, so it was well received. But then we also did a striper video, and we smacked them. We went down below Melton Dam and used all artificials and proved that, yeah, we can. You can have really, really good days. So when those episodes aired, they were on NBC Sports. I guess he had a big deal, and it was actually everybody saw them. And those episodes were so good, they replayed them. I don't know how many times, 12 times, 24 times, I don't know. But I was just doing this part-time at the time, but the demand for guiding was out the roof, 1,000 emails I had, and I just, I told my wife at the time, she's no longer my wife, but she, I said, I think I can do this full time. And she says, I don't think so. She called me a dreamer. I was like, I think I can do this. And it got to the point to where it was kind of silly to go to work, when you basically can raise your rates to whatever you wanted to, and you make more in a weekend than you would make all week at work. That's when it gets to the point, say, I can't do this anymore. So, but the demand has to be there, because it is a big leap, to start any business, to quit your job and start your business, whatever you do, it's a leap of faith. And, I knew that I had enough people to go. All I'd have to do was book 3 trips a week, and, I would be okay. So it started out, doing that, and it's taken off and hasn't slowed down.
Yeah.
So,
did you have to invest in a new boat or anything like that?
Oh, yeah.
Or like, what was that? What was that like? Like all of a sudden you're going to be a full-time guide.
Yeah. Well, I started out with my 16-foot boat and, you know, quickly realized, man, I can only take 2 people. So the problem is when you try to go to the bank and say, hey, I'm a fishing guide that charges $400 to $500 a day. Give me a boat loan. And they're like, nope, because you write everything off. So I have slowly built everything up, mainly just by, help from my dad. He helped me get a boat. But, then over time I've worked and worked and worked. And I've just, this new boat that I just got, this Sea Arc 26-foot modified V boat, I bought an empty shell, $9,000 and built it out the way I wanted.
Mm-hmm.
So basically just pay cash for everything. So it's,
going.
And I tell people all the time, I said, you're only going to get out of it what you put into it,
Well, you seem to be putting in a tremendous amount, and having fished with you a few times now, you can see it. You're a hard-working guy. Where do you get your work ethic?
My dad, he does heating and air, but he's always doing something. He does not stick around he helps out in the community, loves to fish. He's always walleye fished, just go. And that's, I've kind of wanted to do that. I can't sit around. I think a lot of guides have problems, ADD or what. Having to, just being drawn out there, that's the thing, man. If I go a day or two without knowing, it does kind of mess with my head because, I've got a trip, I need, and the main thing is I need to find skipjacks.
Right.
The skipjack herring is, the kind of the lifeblood of my guiding. That's what kind of sets me apart is being able to locate those skipjacks. And you put the skipjacks out there, that's going to tell you exactly where the stripers are. You can spend 5 minutes on a spot and put a skipjack there, whether they're biting or not. That skipjack will tell you where the stripers are.
Mm-hmm.
So it's kind of, I guess any kind of bait you could chum. You can chum the bait, and if it takes off running, it's like, oh yeah, there's something here.
Right, and that's what you're saying with it. When you put a skipjack out, you can tell where the stripers are because even if they're not biting, they're going to chase, or the skipjack will see them or sense them and take off.
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah, and you can tell, just by the speed of the movement of that skipjack that, oh yeah, this is where we want to be. And sometimes you got to wait them out. But,
right. They're not necessarily attacking the bait right away, but the bait's running so fast that it's like we put something down. We're like, we got a nervous bait, something that bait is trying to get away. We may not be getting the bite, but you got a nervous bait and it's a much smaller bait. We're feeling it. You're seeing it because you're putting, tell me about the rig that you're using. Like when you do this skipjack, just so people understand like how you're seeing this bait running and all of that and what size these baits are.
So what I use, I'll go ahead and say I use a bait casting reel. I use a Tranx with a, muskie rod, and I'll have braid on there most of the time. And we'll use like a 8 to 12 foot leader, and depends on the water clarity. And then I'll use a circle hook. I use a trocar circle hook, and sometimes I'll put a stinger hook on there, a little treble hook in the belly of the fish. And we put a balloon 10 to 12 feet up, and we just let them kind of float around. They'll swim all over, and you basically read the balloon. It's going to tell you where those fish are because they'll run, and you can tell. And when you get in a big school of fish, that skipjack really has no idea where he wants to go. He'll go 20 foot one way, then turn back around quickly, and you can really gauge. And that's what's kind of helped me out is gauge when those fish are about to eat, because that skipjack, it'll go this way, this way, this way, this way, this way, and then it gets tighter, and then it comes up to the surface, and I call it the circle of death. Mm. And I say, you're about to get nailed. So, it's probably really similar to what you'd see, in the ocean. So,
well, yeah, for some fish, some fish are like that, and other fish aren't. That seems like it's almost like the way that like a barracuda does. It just kind of goes around, and it doesn't just attack it right away. But you'll see similar behavior with that, or a tarpon at night, or a big snook. Same kind of thing. If you had a bait on a balloon like that, or a cork or something like that, that's pretty cool. Mm-hmm. So the herring, that's your lifeblood. And
Yep.
this skipjack herring, is that a native fish?
I think it's actually a saltwater fish that has migrated up from the Gulf of Mexico. Over the years, they have gone up the Mississippi, the Ohio, the Tennessee River, and the only place that you're going to find these skipjack herring are reservoirs with locks on them. Huh. So they'll only go up. Knoxville is as high as they can go up. So yeah, you'll. I guess they've came here over time, but I believe there are saltwater species.
That's super interesting, because one of the things I wanted to talk to you about is the striped bass. It's a saltwater species, right? Mm-hmm. So a lot of people may be confused. I may be one of them. You have the striped bass that runs the coast that people are crazy about fishing for, all the way up and down the Northeast coast. It's a very sought after fish, and it can also be a fish that there's been a moratorium on their fish where you can't fish for them because they were so pressured. They're good to eat. They're great to fish for. Lots of people get out on the beaches. They'll fish in wetsuits. They'll fish all night. They'll fish. It is a fish that drives people insane. It's a lot like a tarpon, a lot like a bonefish, a lot like, some of these fish that just drive people insane. The striped bass is definitely one of those in the saltwater. Now where people might get confused is there's striped bass in freshwater that you fish for. That's your fish, and then there are also all these hybrid bass that look kind of similar to. They have stripes on them too. So tell us about the striped bass and why these fish are in saltwater and in the reservoirs in Tennessee.
Well, they figured out, I guess, back in the 40s or 50s when they dammed up Santee Cooper in South Carolina. It's the Marion and Moultrie rivers, I believe. They dammed those up, and they realized that the stripers can, thrive in fresh water. They run way up these rivers to lay their eggs. They would run up 150 or so miles, and they do this in all the rivers on the East Coast. They run up there to spawn, and then they'll lay their eggs, and then the eggs will hatch, and it takes 72 hours at 2 miles an hour for their eggs to hatch and then go back into the ocean. So that's about 150 miles. But when they dammed up the Santee Cooper, and they realized that, hey, stripers, they get real big, they're ferocious feed eaters, and they help control shad populations. So they have started stocking stripers in a lot of reservoirs, but you have to have cool water for these stripers to really thrive at. So they've kind of figured out which reservoirs they would do good in, and they've put them in. And East Tennessee has an abundance of reservoirs that the stripers thrive in.
So the cool water comes from springs and also depth. Is that where are you getting?
Well, you have the man-made dams, which the water that comes out through the dams is cool.
Yeah, the bottom. But that'd be the river down below, right? So the lake, you're talking about the reservoir. Like, are they looking for reservoirs with springs, or are they looking for very deep reservoirs, or like what?
Yeah, I would say the majority of the ones like Norris Lake is a mountain-fed stream.
Okay.
Or reservoir, so they have streams, and they do have big springs, and that's where you would have some stripers in some reservoirs that you might not think should be there, but the reason they can thrive is they have big underwater springs.
Gotcha.
They use them.
And one question before we move on from that. So those stripers that they dammed up in Santee Cooper, did they continue to reproduce naturally if they can't go out into the ocean? So once they're in, then they don't reproduce anymore.
Yeah. Okay. And like I said, the eggs have to stay in suspension for 72 hours. So that's 72 hours at 2 miles an hour, 144 mile long river. And, the rivers just aren't that long before they fall out.
Right.
The way they design our reservoirs, our rivers are 20 miles long.
Right.
Before they'll settle out.
So everything that you're fishing for is a fish that is not going to reproduce?
Yes, correct.
Okay. And that would be the case just because they're in fresh water. But the saltwater fish that are on the coast, they're running up these rivers, and that's why they're on the coast, right? They're going along the coast, hitting up these rivers, like the Hudson River probably is a big area.
And you'll hear about the big river run. That's what they do, is they're running up to spawn.
Right. Okay. That makes more sense. But the actual biology of the fish, the one that you catch in Melton Hill Reservoir and the one that somebody might catch off of Massachusetts, is the same fish.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, they are.
Right. Okay. So that clears it up for a lot of people. I mean, you kind of hear that and you kind of look at the fish and but the lake run fish look so much bigger, or not lake run fish, but the ones that you're catching are so fat and so big. And the other ones, the natural stripers out in the ocean, seem to be more thin, more athletic looking. They probably have a lot more predators.
Well, they have a lot more area they have to cover to keep up with the bait.
Yeah.
Whereas on a reservoir or a river, you don't have to go very far. The bait's going to come to you for the most part. These stripers will sit on a point and just kind of wait for a ball of bait to come by. The waters are so much more fertile here in the reservoirs that we have here. And that's kind of part of the reason why they put stripers in there, is just because the bait populations need to be kept in check.
Yeah.
So
well, it's working.
They're chunky.
I mean, it's working because, I mean, a big part of stocking programs is to raise money for, like the environment. Like when we buy fishing license, when anglers come into town, it's good for the economy. It's good for so many things. That fishing license money goes towards conservation. Our fishing tackle money goes towards conservation. So, I mean, that's kind of the idea. Get people out on the water, have them, enjoy themselves, catch a trophy fish right there. And it's working, right?
Yes, it is. Yeah, they put 250,000 stripers a year in Watts Bar Reservoir, and that kind of fuels several other reservoirs, because they do move through the dams. They'll go through the locks when they open the locks up, and fish will be introduced into other reservoirs. So it definitely is. It really helps that. Yeah, it's all dependent upon stocking and buying fishing licenses.
Right. So it might be ground you don't want to necessarily tread in, but I'm super interested, because the best saltwater fishing guides that I know are the ones that know the bait the best. The best offshore guides always get their bait. On tough days, they get the bait. And it's not about where the fish are or if the fish are biting, but if you're still trying to catch bait at noon, you're probably not going to have a great day. Somebody that caught bait at 8:30 is probably going to have a great day. But it's all about knowing that bait. And the best fishermen I know the bait, whether they're artificial lure fishermen or they never throw a cast net once in their life. They know where that bait is, and they know how the fish respond to that bait. You are similar in that you live and die by the skipjack herring. How do you keep your finger on the pulse of where they are?
I spend way more time scouting bait than I do anything else. And not only do I have to find out where the skipjacks are, I have to find out where the threadfin shad are, because the threadfin shad are what the skipjacks are eating. I
gotcha. Okay.
So we have to catch bait to catch bait. Mm-hmm. And I spend a lot of time, certain times of the year after July, you have billions and billions of little tiny threadfin shad all over the lake. But if you know where those spawning grounds are, that's where the skipjacks are going to be.
So a day with you starts out by catching bait. That's how we've always started catching bait. Explain the bait catching process.
So, I use a couple of different methods. Sabiki rigs works. Sometimes I'll take two little crappie jigs, maybe 18, 20 inches apart, throw those. We'll use a popping cork with a jig on it. Sometimes we'll use spoons. It's just, I start out with several different things, and we go with what they're biting the best. I'm going to try to get 10 to 15 skipjacks, put them in my bait tank. I've got a 100-gallon bait tank, and it's I think that's kind of a necessity. That's why I had to get a big boat. I've got that 26-foot boat to store all my rods and everything, plus have that 100-gallon bait tank and room to move around. Mm-hmm. I think that's what's kind of set me apart from the other fishing guides, is that's a huge investment just to have a boat that size, just to haul a bait tank, you got to have to go all in if you're going to do the skipjack deal.
Yeah, but the bait tank that you have is not just a normal bait tank. Like,
No,
it's got a filter on it, right? Like, what's difficult about keeping? I mean, every bait that we keep everything from pinfish to pilchards to ballyhoo to skip. We have a threadfin herring ourselves, and every bait. You have to be kind of careful about it. You use dehookers and don't touch some baits. You can cast net other baits. Then you can only put so many baits in certain wells. And you learn all this over time. What is hard about keeping the skipjack? What's the challenge?
First of all, they need cold water, cooler water. They need plenty of area to swim around because they don't sit still. They are always constantly moving. I guess they have to. You need to have the salinity right. That's one thing that most people have to worry about with freshwater bait is you have to maintain a certain salinity. So I actually have a little meter on my boat that keep the salinity right where it needs to be.
Now, even if you're using the water from the right where you caught it from, you fill your tank with that, and then the salinity can get off with the bait in there.
If you don't have, we're freshwater, but the bait, if you have to add salt to that water or the bait, the ammonia levels just go out the roof and those fish will turn red nose and just nothing's going to touch it. So,
wow.
Yeah.
Wow. That's probably a hard lesson to learn.
Oh yeah.
How long did it take you to learn that?
Nobody's killed more bait than I have. And that's what I have killed more bait than anybody, but that's how you learn.
That is how you learn. And so on the days where you're are you having some tough days sometimes where you're not catching the bait?
I have a few tricks up my sleeve that it's got to be very bad conditions not to get bait.
Nice.
I've got a kind of a few techniques. I invested in the live scope, and that thing right there, I can see, and skipjacks have a particular way they swim. They move real fast and they kind of go in circles. So I can look at that live scope. I can pull into a cove. I can pan around that cove and sit there and look at each individual school of fish, and I can tell those are skipjacks. And you know exactly how far they are out, how deep they are. So you can take your jigs, throw them out to that school, let them sink down, and get them more often than not. So it's, that little tool right there, they throw out the word game changer. That, when you can sit there and look at the fish and see just by the movement what they are and then go catch them, that's next level stuff right there.
Lawrence came out with similar technology this year, and we've been using it. And the first time we used it, we marked tarpon with it, and they were like swimming through by the bridge, and it was unbelievable. Then we could throw our lures out there and we could see how the fish are reacting to it. But then the other thing that we started using it for were the mullet. Like the mullet, the mullet will make a mud, and we're in there trying to throw the cast net. And so you're looking for one to flip or do something. Otherwise, you have no idea. It's just muddy water. You can't see anything until this new technology, and you start panning around with this, and you see a school of mullet coming at you, and you're like, okay, 3, 2, 1, throw. And boom, you just caught 50. It's amazing.
You know how many's in your net before you pull the net up.
It's amazing. Because you can see, sometimes we would throw the net and you would see the bait swim right under the net as the net's falling. And you're like, I don't think you got any. And maybe you come up with 1 or 2. And it's like, well, we were on them, but it's just it was too deep or too slow. Now, that's super cool, man. That bait catching and what you're doing with the bait is really cool. But I would imagine that is the most difficult part of your job.
It is, but I also love the challenge though too. Because I am kind of one of the only guys that really does this. It's kind of neat that I figured a lot of it out.
Yeah, so. In that 100-gallon tank, you're being so careful with your baits. How many baits can you put in 100 gallons without damaging them?
And let's say an average 15-inch skipjack, I can probably put 15 in there and keep them all day.
So they need a lot of water. Like if those were mullet, we could put I don't know, 50. in that same amount of water. And the mullet are smaller, a little smaller, but anyway, that's super challenging. So a 16-inch mullet, a 16-inch skipjack. What fish eats that? 20-pounder, 30-pounder?
20-pounders have no problem gobbling those things down.
No problem.
So, no problem.
That's what I like, man. Big bait, big fish. That's the first thing I thought when I went fishing with you. I was like, that's bait. Right on. This is going to be fun.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. And just watching them, beat them up is half the fun, So it's, basically just doing what they're going to do in nature anyway. It's just you get to be part of it.
Yeah.
They're eventually going to get them anyway. So.
Well, one of the best bites in all of fishing, in my opinion, is a tarpon eating a live mullet. And a lot of fly fishermen miss out on this because they never get to see it. But, man, if you're a tarpon fisherman, you should see a tarpon eat a live mullet. And I'll tell you what, a close second is a giant striper eating one of these skipjack herring. It's pretty awesome, man, what you got going on.
Especially when, and this happened today, we saw this earlier today, when that striper gets zoned in on that skipjack, he'll come right up to the boat, just sitting there, just pounding it right at the boat, and you're sitting there watching this. This striper's oblivious to you sitting there. And it's just, it's an awesome thing to watch. And,
it would use the boat, right? Like if it pinned it up against the boat, it would probably use the boat.
I've had them just smack it right up against it and tag off with it.
Just like if it was a log, like you're like a log floating out in the middle of the river. If that bait got up against that log, he's going to smash it. Oh
yeah. We've done so many different. I've seen them all knock them, 2 feet out of the water. And, I've shot some really cool videos of the drone, overhead, and you think it's, one striper chasing a skipjack, and you watch the drone video, and there's 20 of them down there.
Really? Isn't that cool? That's so cool. And
it really shows you. It's pretty cool to see how cautious they are too, though. These fish I think they're a little smarter than we give them credit for. One thing I have noticed, and I explained this to a lot of people, that striper's sitting up there at the, pounding on that skipjack. And they said, why isn't he eating it? I said, well, my theory is that that's a male striper wanting to kill that skipjack for a female. So I have actually, and that's one of my secrets, but I'll go ahead and tell it. I will actually take a skipjack, bash it over the head, and throw it out there under a balloon. And it's not a 15-pounder that comes up and grabs it. It's a 28 to 34-pounder. It's the female. So my theory is that male stripers sometimes will kill the bait, let it sink down, and the big female will grab it.
Really? So, that's interesting.
I do that on my trip. Yeah, it's pretty neat. And I figured that out just years ago, just, frustrated. So why aren't these things eating them? Or, or they just hit it. And I could see that the fish wasn't that big of a fish, but then when it sinks down and grabs it, that was a big one.
Yeah.
God, that might be the female.
Well, it's like that happens once and you're like, that's interesting. Happens 3 or 4 or 5 times. You're like, there's something to that. Like every time that happens, you're catching a big fish.
Yeah. And then, now I just, when I see that they're just hitting at it, I said, hey, watch this. So I'll pull out my boger grip, bash them over the head, throw it out there, and bam, we're catching fish. So it's little tricks that you learn along the way. And you gain much more respect for these fish because they are way more complex than we probably ever thought they were.
What do you know about like the life cycle and the complexity of these stripers, and what does the program look like for the stocking?
Well, I know Norris, they'll put 125,000 fish in, and they're 2 inches. Watts Bar, they'll put 250,000 in. So each lake has different numbers, but they try to put them in at 2 inches, and they kind of grow kind of quick. These 10-pound stripers, they might be 3 to 4 years old. And then, when they get up to 20 pounds, they're probably, 8 to 9 years old. They'll get up to 30 pounds. That's probably 13 to 14. And then, they'll get on up to 20 to 25 years old with some of these bigger ones.
Wow.
So, these fish that these guys like to put on the wall, they're probably older than their kids.
Huh.
So, it's not like a deer that they only live 6 years. These fish can do 25 years.
25 years. That's really old.
Yeah, that was 65 pounds. I mean, they've been proven to grow that big here.
Wow. And you're I mean, it says loud and clear right on your website, and one of the first things you say to everybody, even me, I had no interest in killing one of these fish, but you're 100% catch and release.
Always have been.
Always have been. Tell me about that decision.
Yeah. Well, I kind of grew up fishing for 60-pound fish, but then as I get into it, I realized how rare they are. And there's only certain places that you can even achieve that in, So it takes a real special environment to grow a fish that big in just a long time. So, 40-pounder is a really, really nice fish, but man, you let that fish go if the water temps will allow it, and the fish can get bigger. It's 15, 16 years on its way to being a 50 to 60 pounder. So I've kind of seen the pinnacle of how good it can be, but I've also, with the internet and all this, I've seen the decline in a lot of areas. So I'd rather, me being selfish, I'd rather just see them swimming and give everybody a chance to fish.
Right. And you, what's the culture in the clientele and in the people who want to come catch stripers? I mean, you've been doing this for a long time, so people probably know what they're getting at this point, but it probably wasn't always that way when you have a catch and release policy on your boat.
Yeah. I've had some people that would say, "Hey, are you seriously catch and release?" And I say, if you want to mount a fish, there's plenty of other guides that will take you, and let you mount, catch fish and mount them. But, I don't want to use my boat or my methods to go out and target these fish just to kill them. I mean, we've had them die unintentionally. And, if that happens, but to go out and say, I want to go, put one on the wall, get a replica mount, or I even offer canvas prints of my pictures if you want something to hang on the wall.
Well, I would think that, what is the replica mount situation? Because nobody kills a fish and sends it to the taxidermist anymore in the Keys, and that's one of the places where you mount the most fish in the entire world. Everything's a replica mount. Yeah,
I think stripers are such a complex paint job that I haven't seen too many of them that really, really look good. Really, I said, I've got a replica mount, and I was like, it's okay. But, just until somebody maybe down there can
they could do it. I mean, they can do it. They can do a dolphin. And what they're doing is they're taking a photograph of the fish. Mm-hmm. And if you go into a place like King Sailfish Mounts or whatever, he's got, sailfish is one of the fish that he mounts. So let's just use that for an example. He's got literally thousands of molds of sailfish. So if you caught one that was a certain girth and a certain length, he's got one that's within a half an inch, within a millimeter of the fish that you caught, because over the years, he's just got so many of these. Then he takes a picture of it. And if it has a damaged tail, if it has something interesting going on with the sail, if it has some interesting colorations or a scar on it, he incorporates all of that. And he just sits there and he is like a legitimate super artist with a what do you call it? The airbrush. And he just sits there and does it. And I guarantee you he could do a striped bass. I mean, 100%. Like I would think that would be way easier than some of these other fish that he's doing. But I don't know, might be worth giving it a shot. He's a nice guy to work with. Anyway. So what do you're fishing 300 days a year, and you're as excited to go out tomorrow as you were the day before. What drives you day to day?
Well, I guess working in an office for 10 years, doing the environmental geology thing, I was miserable. I guess that's one factor is I don't want to go back to that. but I enjoy seeing people do things they've never done before. I don't have to catch another striper, consider my fishing career complete. But I do enjoy seeing the kids do it. I enjoy taking out guys that are in their mid 80s that have fished their whole lives and said, I've never caught a fish like this. That just gets me, because I want to be that guy, to go out and really enjoy it. Is, we only got so long here. So that's part of what gets me going. And every morning, 4:30, 5 o'clock, I'm ready to go, and, I'm 42 now. I've probably fished as much as anybody over the last 20 years, and I can see myself doing it another 20 years. The sun and the heat gets to me. I'm going to kind of next year do half day onlys. I'm, after 10 o'clock in the morning, it's pretty, and I've come to realize that the fishing's not worth it. But that's when you're getting the most action from before sunrise to 10 o'clock. Yep. Well, my saying is fish don't have eyelids and they can't wear hats or sunglasses. So when you start reaching for your shades, they kind of really slow down. And when you start hearing the jar flies in the trees, when the sun's peeking through. And there's one other thing that I tell people all the time. There's a couple of bald eagles that stay below Melton Hill Dam. And when they're real low to the water, fishing's good. But as those bald eagles make their way up the ridge and you can see them sitting way up on top of the ridge, that's when the fishing's over with.
So what correlation are you making with the eagles?
I think the bait, and they sit up there and they see bait fish cruising by. We'll have a skipjack get knocked off, and it goes a quarter, half mile down the river, and then it comes up. Then that bald eagle will go get it and then take off. So they're sitting up there watching. They see, all these clouds of bait fish come up. They see the stripers, the blue herons and everything. They see all that stuff. They got eagle eyes. They got a bird's eye view of the situation. So they can tell when all that bait starts going down. And I can tell too, because I got the live scope. When everything starts going down, the fish just don't want to come up. So they have to get higher on the ridge to be able to see down into the water. Just like we do on the skiff. I think they're just done. They just, they're done feeding. So they'll go up there and keep an eye on things, but they don't attack our baits. They just sit up there and chill out.
That's interesting. Man, it is amazing how far away those eagles can see a bait fish.
Oh yeah.
We had one. We were fishing by the 7 Mile Bridge, and we were fishing with live mullet, and we just had one live mullet. It died, threw it out behind the boat, changing bait, and there was a bald eagle sitting on the 7 Mile Bridge, and it came from way away, swooped down, and got that single mullet right behind the boat. It was pretty cool. Yeah. You probably have that happen way more than we do in the Keys, but that was I've never seen a bald eagle right there at that spot. I mean, but further back in the Everglades, we see them all the time, but that particular spot was just strange. And then he flew so far away to eat it, and that's where he came from. Like it was so far away. It would be so cool to have eyes like an eagle. Like you would be able to see anything.
Yep. But, when I do this stuff every single day, so I get to anticipate that. And, it really helps, to sit there and say, hey, and I'll tell people ahead of time. I said, you see that bald eagle? I said, these fish are going to bite until that bald eagle goes up. And more often than not, when that sun comes up over the ridge and it just seems to be dead, and you look up and the eagle's gone. So, it's all about just, and that's what I do is I give everybody the effort, as much effort as I can, until the fish quit. And, I think people now know what to expect. I'm not going to sit out there all day long in the sun and just fry myself. I'm already.
Yeah, you look pretty red today, man.
I am. So, it's but that's something, just patterns you figure out, every day. And that's how you can fish 300 days a year, is you pace yourself, you fish the best times. I'm constantly looking at the Lunar table. There's an app that I use that gives you the best hunting and fishing times. And, I tell people, I say, hey man, these things, we might want to wait around because, there's a major feed coming up at 10:30. And, I think that weather does trump the moon phases. But man, you can actually get on some bites that, you might not expect if you do, pay attention to the saloon and tables.
Have you kept a journal over these years?
I have not. This is the first year that I've actually logged how many strappers we've caught. And I kind of I just now found this app back in January, and I was like, I'm just going to try, because I would tell people, I have no idea how many strappers we've actually land in a given year. But so far, it's October 12th, and I think I'm at 780 strappers over 15 pounds. Those are the only ones I kind of.
You'd be like, my boys in Louisiana that have a doorman's clicker on a little board that they keep on right by their trolling motor and hit it with their foot every time you catch a fish. And man, I couldn't believe that when I first went there. But they said, well, how many fish do you think we've caught today? And I was like, I don't know, like 60. They said 32. And I'm like, wow, okay, well, that's why you do it, because they keep a count every single one, and if you actually count them, it's not as many as you think. It's real easy to say, man, we must have caught 100 fish today.
In your brain, and that's what would get me, is your brain. You hook a fish and lose it, you still think you count that in your head as, it's hard to keep up with it. So I just, I use that Angler's Log app, and it's pretty. I'm probably not going to do it next year too, but it does. I can look at a picture of a fish caught, 15 years ago, and I know exactly where it's at, and, give me a date when that picture was caught. Yeah. I'll go try that spot again.
Yeah. Well, that is interesting with the apps and the technology. Even just when you take a picture on your phone, it will record the date and the time. And that is pretty interesting, because we were just doing it the other day where we were catching triple tail. And I was like, I wonder what time of the day it was when we caught these before. And I went through my phone, and sure enough, I found the picture, and it said exactly what time I took that picture. And that was interesting, because then from that, you can look back at exactly what the tide was doing. Like you can go back through the tide tables and look at the old times. But I mean, it's really, there was one point where I was talking about like recording. The most important thing to record, like in a situation where you're fishing against the tides, is the time of the day that you caught the fish and where you caught the fish. And so if you just take a picture of it, now you've done the time of the day. So you got the date and the time and the picture of the fish on your phone. Well, that's one of the steps. All you got to do is remember where it was. Then you can hit your GPS mark and you're good to go. And then you can go back with just that information. You can go back and figure out what the tide was at home later when so that you can replicate that situation. You talked about technology before. You've talked about a couple of different things. What have been the biggest changes? That scope, the live scope, or what Lawrence is calling active target is the same kind of technology. And then you mentioned drones. What else have you used that have changed the way that you fish?
That's a good question. Of course, just cell phones and stuff, being able to share information. I have a couple of buddies that, they might slip up and show a picture, and, you kind of can tell the background there. But I guess, man, besides, I can't really think of anything that's really changed it too much beside those two. But, I guess mapping, the mapping software and stuff is really, really helped. But Google Earth, I think, is one that's, you can, hear, basically with these landlocked stripers, you can find any boat ramp now. And that's kind of a good or bad thing, but I think now, with Google Earth, people can watch a video and start picking out the landmarks and, you can find stuff there. But
that leads to the discussion of social media and responsible use of social media for fishing guides. What's your opinion there?
I think it's a necessary evil. I think you have to get the word out there because, word of mouth is the best form of advertising, but you still want to show you've got an audience. You still want to show that, yeah, we're catching fish. So you have to do the Instagram, or I feel like I have to, and do the Facebook, and, just to let people know, hey, I'm still here. So, I don't post every fish I catch. I don't make YouTube videos. I think YouTube is really, kind of damaged, some of the good spots around here, especially on the skipjacks. Several of our local YouTubers like to expose the skipjack spots, and I'm kind of bitter about that. But I can't patent my fishing techniques or my locations, so I just I'm a hush about a lot of stuff.
Yeah.
I show that, we catch stripers, but that's about really.
It is a fine line. It's a very fine line.
Yeah.
Because I mean, I don't know, man. When I first started fishing, it was the first one at the boat ramp and the last one to leave, and that's who, you're like, I wonder whose truck that is, and then you figure it out, and then you're like, okay, you guys got a little respect, and then I don't know. It's just changed so much. Now it's mostly social media.
Yeah, they want the instant gratification. As soon as they catch a fish, they're putting it, or they'll do the Facebook Live. A lot of guides around here that, the out-of-state guides kind of don't really respect anything that we've done. So they'll go Facebook Live when they catch fish. And, and that's basically just broadcasting to their whole audience that, hey, they're catching fish right here, right now. That's kind of irresponsible.
Yeah.
If you want to post a video, once the fish have moved off a spot, that makes more sense than saying, hey, right here, right now, come on, let's go. And, that leads to way too many people fishing these spots. And, when the fish get overpressured, they're gone. They'll move. So,
yeah,
I'm a little bitter about that, but I've been burned a couple of times.
Yeah. Well, but, it's the world we live in, unfortunately. And
yeah. Oh, yeah. But there's fish all over the place. Big fish, when there's a lot of boats that move into an area, the big fish that have been caught before, I think they move. And so, I've kind of got plan Bs if there, too many boats in an area. I've got plenty of other places to go.
Well, you're obviously doing a lot of things right to be booking that many days and going out. And I can say, just from my own personal experience, you're a good guy to spend the day with, and a lot about the fishing that you're doing, and you make it an enjoyable time. I've taken my kids with you. I've taken other people with you. It's been great. I look forward to doing it again. Okay. What would somebody do if they want to book a trip with you? Are you booked up way in advance, or how does somebody do it?
It really depends. April, May, I'll book those. I'm almost already booked. I may have a couple of days left in April of 2022. So I've actually booked trips into 2023 already. Just get on my website, meltonhillbill.com. All the information's up there. All my available dates are up there. I'm pretty easy to get a hold of, my Instagram, Facebook. I'm willing to.
April and May, is that your peak? Is that what you would consider the peak?
So, in my opinion, that's when they go to spawn. All these stripers, we talked about them running up the rivers out of the ocean. Well, they run up out of the reservoirs to certain areas up the rivers here. So I have figured out, where a lot of these big congregations of your spawning females. I figured out where they go. So, and a lot of times I've realized it's kind of like a largemouth bass on a bed. You put something in front of them, they're not necessarily going to eat it, but they will kill it. Mm-hmm. And one thing that they really don't want around the area where they're trying to spawn is something that's going to eat their eggs. A frisky skipjack. They do not. They will kill every one of them. So I kind of figured that out early in the process, and that's why I ran a jet boat. I ran a jet boat to get up to those spawning grounds. So,
and that happens April and May.
April and May is, yeah.
But then, I've fished with you in the dead of winter in duck hunting clothes, and we did great then. Also,
yeah, that we were fishing that Bull Run coal-fired powered steam plant.
That's right.
That water was probably in the low 60s. They didn't know it was January.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
But you can catch fish all the whole year long. So.
Oh yeah. There's not a week out of the year I don't expect to catch a 30-pound fish, because I can always find the right temps. And stripers are a cold water fish, so their metabolism doesn't really slow down here until 44 degrees. That seems to be where they'll quit eating the skipjacks. They might eat smaller baits, shiners and stuff, and I just want to catch them on the skipjacks. So when the water gets, 45 or below, I'll just move to the steam plants. And that's when they really pile up in these steam plants, and we got several of them around here.
Yeah.
So I've always got somewhere to go. If it gets too much colder than that, I might take a week off. But,
I don't think you will. I really don't. I don't think you will. I'm even questioning whether you're going to take half days tomorrow. But judging by your sunburn today, I think you might need to.
Yeah, it's pretty embarrassing too. So it stopped right.
Oh
there.
Yeah, nice. That's sweet, man. That needs to be the. You need to take a selfie without your hat on and let me use that for the thumbnail for this podcast. That would be amazing.
Yeah, I guess. I started going to church with my wife, and it's one of those "come as you are" churches, so I can wear my hat to church, so they don't mind.
Well, you stand out a lot more when you take your hat off. If they make you take your hat off,
yeah, people, it's just time on the water. That's how you get this.
That's right, man. That's right. Well, Billy, it's been great catching up with you. I look forward to fishing with you again. And if anybody wants to have a great experience, this is a trip worthy of leaving the Keys. A lot of people leave the Keys. They go up north and they go to Tennessee or Georgia, and a lot of people are coming your way around that Knoxville area. They want to see the mountains. They want to get a little cooler weather. Yeah. This is one you put on your list right here. This is a great one.
Yeah, I'm right off I-75. So you can just come right up 75. And I'm right near Pigeon Forge, Gatlinburg, Dollywood. I'm about 45 minutes away. So you can...
there you go.
You come do all with me while your wife shops.
There you go. Sounds good, man. All right, Billy. Thanks, man. We'll talk to you soon.
All right. You have a good one.
See ya.